fair tax abolishes corporate and personal income tax and inheritance tax and interest and dividend tax and capital gains tax. It does all of these things, and it abolishes the IRS and gets them off of my back and your back. It does all of that.
And the unemployment rate.
And it puts people to work, and it taxes pimps and prostitutes and drug dealers and pornographers. I want them to pay their fair share of all this and then some. It does all of that, and I asked him if you challenge me every way that you can challenge me. And I finished with that list, and Greenspan said, well, you left out it provides an incentive for savings and investment, which this country needs. But add that to what you said, and now keep saying it because you're on solid ground. Okay, that's the economic argument. But here's the part that is the best part. This is the part that I believe in the most profoundly, and that is that you pass a fair tax, and you take this burden off of everybody's back, and now we turn all of our focus into productive work in the productive sector of the economy, not the any press in here, not the parasitic sector of the economy, but the productive sector of the economy. We do all of that. But little Johnny or little Susie that walks into the convenience store and they want to buy their box of Skittles or Barbie doll clothes or baseball cards or whatever they buy nowadays, and they count out their money and they put it up on the counter. Then they got to get a couple dimes for Uncle Sam. And you know, it's pretty hard. It hurts a lot if you're Johnny or Susie to have to save your 89 cents for the Skittles and then put a couple dimes up there for Uncle Sam. But when they do that, every transaction, millions and in fact billions of times, they'll be reminded of how expensive the federal government is. And those little kids will put less demand on government. They will say, I want government to do less, not more. And we will raise generations of conservatives who will take personal responsibility, and they'll be anchored back to their faith, to their families, to their individual responsibilities, and to free enterprise. Now that's a huge component of what a tax policy can do to transform our society in the right direction. The other component is this, and that's school choice. We have watched as the left has moved in and occupied the institutions of our civilization. They've occupied the institutions of education, too many of our churches, the media, the mainstream media, Hollywood, the list goes on and on. The journalists, the journalism schools. So with school choice, these kids that are being taught that the founding fathers were deists and that faith had no component to do with our history, and that justice somehow is this idea of social justice, that if you can tax the rich and give it to the poor. I mean, they'll be writing in history books, and probably are right now, Obama's statement about share the wealth. Oh. And how do you think they're going to spin that? Well, good thing, right? Compassionate, to take somebody else's money and give it to somebody else and call yourself compassionate? Dig in your own pocket once. Pass your own collection plate. See how you do. That's not popular demand. That is socialism, or something to the left of socialism. But if we have school choice, and here's what I do. I just look at this and say, here's the components of the public funding that goes into education, whether it's property tax, state tax, those federal dollars for No Child Left Behind, which I'd be happy to get rid of completely, get the federal government out of K through 12 education completely. But I would say this, put that all into one check per student. Go over there to that student and staple that check to that kid's shirt collar. And then turn to the parents or legal guardians and nobody else and say, your job is to get that kid an education, and we're going to hold you accountable that you do that. Now, I know the faithful people will make sure their kids get a moral education along with a good academic one. But I also believe that the people that are living that lifestyle, where they're sitting around eating bonbons and smoking Marlboros and maybe doing a few drugs and watching their kids run around the yard in their diapers or not, I still think those people, even though they don't want to live an example, even though they don't want to take a responsibility for their children, will still choose a school for their kids that will teach them a moral standard along with the academic one. And I think that transforms America. So those two pieces, if I could magic wand it, would be the fair tax, school choice, to transform America while we wait for the younger generation to come in, like you, Harry, and take this country back and be responsible to do the thing that my generation actually eroded and didn't contribute to. That's what's going on in my mind. That's why I can support Todd. I've read the better parts of Todd's book, not every word, but I went through that thing kind of fast, and I read that thing through, and I thought, I'm going to find some place where we disagree. Okay, I went through there and read down through it. Maybe there was a little nuance somewhere I missed, but I found no place we disagreed. And you're a fair tax man. You've got your faith right. You understand this thing from the full spectrum, the real full spectrum. And we need full spectrum conservatives. It isn't enough to be only pro-life and only pro-marriage, because if you go and beat that drum every day, there's a lot of things going on that need to have your attention too. And if you go on the fiscal side and simply argue that you can manage society by voting no on appropriations bills, well, where does that get you? Someplace, but not far. But we have all of these places across the spectrum, from defending innocent unborn human life, defending marriage, making sure that we nurture the nuclear family, protect the Constitution, keep our spending down, actually shrink this federal government, and devolve the powers back to the states, and defend our Constitution. All of that I read in your book. So it's hard for me to think that that Todd would be anything other than a full spectrum conservative, or else you had a ghostwriter. In which case, I'd like to think he would be here instead of you tonight, and he's not. So that's why I'm very, very happy to be here to lend my support to your campaign, to congratulate you for putting your name and your commitment and your wife and your families up before the people in this area. And I'm glad that you're here, and I thank you all for your support for Todd. Mine's here, yours is here. We're going to do this work. We're going to unseat this guy. And
no, we got to get rid of
That's great. I'm really glad Steve shared that and took us through a little of the history, because that is so important that we educate from this broad spectrum perspective. It's not just one little bill. There's a reason why we're doing things and why we became successful. And I think one of the great things happening in our country is we're starting to have this conversation now about what made us successful to begin with, and why we're abandoning everything that made us so successful. So, I think, can you take like 3 questions?
Oh, sure.
Let me just fire 3. It's 3 questions. And
you going to ask all 3?
No, I'm not asking you. Okay. No, anything, anything that's going up there in Congress that bothers you? You've had a long day. So
I just want to, it's not really a question, it's a comment. Just because the congressman or senator or whomever's running for an office, whether it's local, state, and federal level, just because they have an R in front of their or behind their name, it doesn't mean they're automatically going to get a vote. We are watching them as much as we are watching the Democrats, and that's the only thing that Barack Obama has done for this nation, is it has pulled the wool from our eyes, and we are going to be making sure that we vote the right person in. And if I feel personally that somebody is fulfilling their own personal agenda, I am going to pull them out as fast as I put their ass in. Wow.
Yeah, just give you a little anecdote. I went up to the Scott Brown election in Massachusetts, spent 3 days up there in just many places I could get in Massachusetts, but a lot of it was in Boston. And I would go into the Scott Brown, this is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and go into the phone bank offices that he had. Now, I was surprised. I thought I was this anonymous guy, and I would walk in there, and, well, I wasn't anonymous, to keep that part of it short. But I was flattered that they pay attention to what is going on the floor of the House. And I remember standing in, was it Littleton, Massachusetts, lots of people in there, and they stopped making phone calls, and so I give this little speech. I try to keep it short so I'm not keeping people from doing their job too very long. And I finished this up, and this happened actually in both places, that phone banks that I stopped in on that day. And individuals got up, and there were usually 2 or 3, and they would say, "We want you to understand that we don't think the Republicans did that good a job either, and that you spent too much money when you were in power." And so they would go on about that a little bit. I'd say, "Hold it, please check my voting record. I voted against a lot of that spending," and I would defend myself. And then here's the answer that would come back that you're probably going to give me or others, and that is this. The answer was this: "Well, you might get it," which means we don't really think you do. You could, you might get it, but we want to make sure you take the message back to your colleagues and tell them we're not going to tolerate that kind of spending if we put you back in power.
All right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I just, it's undeplorable.
Tom?
I have a question. Since there's no clear front runner, are you considering running for president? Because you ought to.
I have a video